The wounded lay scattered across the ridge like broken dolls. Some were calling for help. Others couldn't call at all. Blood pooled in the dirt. Smoke curled through the air like spirits escaping the mouths of the dying, and amid the gunfire, amid the shelling, amid the chaos that turned men into ghosts, one figure moved alone. No rifle, no helmet, just a stretcher and a prayer. "Lord," he whispered, "help me get one more." He had no way of knowing how many were left alive. No way of knowing whether the next body he crawled toward would be breathing or cold. But it didn't matter. Desmond Doss was going back. Back into hell. Back into the blood and fire. Because someone might still be alive. And Desmond had made a promise. He was born into poverty in Lynchburg, Virginia, in 1919. The second of 3 children. His father, William Doss, was a carpenter and a veteran of the First World War. He came back from the trenches a changed man, quiet, sometimes angry, and in time prone to drink. His mother, Bertha, was a devout Seventh-day Adventist who kept the household anchored in faith and scripture. From the very beginning, Desmond lived with a deep sense of right and wrong. When he was a boy, he got into a fight with his brother Harold. In a flash of rage, Desmond picked up a brick and struck him. Harold crumpled to the ground, unconscious and bleeding. Desmond thought he'd killed him. He ran inside, trembling and crying. And when Harold finally stirred and stood again, Desmond made a vow. He would never take another human life. Not ever. When Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, Desmond didn't hesitate. He wanted to serve. But he also made clear he wouldn't carry a gun. He wouldn't take life, even in war. He registered as a conscientious objector, though he preferred a different term. Conscientious cooperator. He wasn't trying to avoid duty. He just didn't believe he could serve God by learning to kill. He trained as a medic, and from the start, he was hated for it. At Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Desmond's life became hell. His fellow soldiers mocked him relentlessly. They called him a coward. They beat him during drills. They cursed him during prayer. He refused to train with weapons and wouldn't report for duty on Saturdays, his Sabbath, unless it was a medical emergency. Even his officers despised him. One sergeant tried to get him discharged on mental grounds. Another court-martialed him for insubordination. He faced months of pressure, paperwork, and threats. But Desmond never raised his voice, never retaliated. He simply repeated what he believed. While others are taking lives, I'll be saving them. Eventually, the army relented. They let him stay, and then they sent him to war. First Guam, then Leyte in the Philippines. Desmond was constantly on the move, under fire, in the jungle, in the dark. He treated gunshot wounds and broken limbs. He held the hands of dying men. He prayed over them as they bled out. His courage didn't come with noise. It came with action. And one by one, those who once mocked him began to follow him. They still didn't understand his beliefs, but they trusted him. Then came Okinawa, April 1945, the last major battle of the Pacific, a brutal, apocalyptic siege meant to break the Japanese resistance before an invasion of the mainland. The island was defended by 100,000 troops. They were dug in, deep tunnels, machine gun nests, cave systems layered into hills, and at the center of it all stood a 400-foot escarpment, Maida Ridge. The men called it Hacksaw Ridge. To take it, they had to climb straight up. Desmond's unit, the 307th Infantry, 77th Division, was tasked with taking the ridge. They went up on ropes and cargo nets one by one. When they reached the top, all hell broke loose. Machine guns opened fire from hidden bunkers. Mortars fell from above. Flamethrowers erupted in trenches. Men screamed and fell back. Within minutes, over 70 men were down. A retreat was ordered. Anyone who could still walk scrambled back to the nets. And Desmond stayed. He didn't know how many were alive. He didn't know how long he could hold out. But he started moving, crawling through the mud, dodging bullets, bandaging wounds, lifting the dying onto his back. One by one, he dragged them to the cliff's edge. He tied them in rope, and he lowered them down the ridge, 30 feet at a time. Each time he prayed, "Lord, just help me get one more." All through the night he worked, no cover, no weapon, no backup, just the sound of fire, the cries of the wounded, and the scrape of his boots against rock. One man had a sucking chest wound. Desmond patched it and carried him half a mile. Another was missing a leg. Desmond tied off the artery with his belt and dragged him anyway. A Japanese sniper fired on him more than once. A mortar hit within feet. He kept going. He treated his enemies too. Bandaged a Japanese soldier who had been abandoned by his own men. Even in war, he believed all life was sacred. By the time the sun rose, he had saved 75 men. 75. The number wasn't known at the time. Desmond never kept count. When asked how many he saved, he said, "It was about 50. His commanders said, "No, at least 100. They compromised on 75. When the unit returned days later to retake the ridge, they refused to go up without him. One of his sergeants told command, "We're not going without Doss. Let the coward pray first, then we'll fight." Desmond knelt at the base of the ridge, prayed aloud, then climbed. Days later, Desmond was wounded. A grenade exploded at his feet. Shrapnel tore through his leg. He used a rifle stock, someone else's, to splint it. As he waited for rescue, a sniper shot him in the arm. He crawled 300 yards to safety. Even then, he refused the stretcher, gave it to someone else. When medics finally picked him up, he asked them to retrieve his Bible, which he had dropped during the blast. They found it, soaked in mud, and returned it to him. He carried it home. Desmond Doss returned from war with 17 pieces of shrapnel in his body, a fractured arm, a destroyed leg, and one lung. He could no longer work. He never took a penny from the government he served. He never boasted. He never wrote a book. But in October 1945, in front of thousands, he received the Medal of Honor from President Truman. The citation read, "He exposed himself to artillery, mortar, and machine gun fire in the line of duty as a medic. He saved the lives of 75 wounded infantrymen, lowering each man down the cliff with a rope-supported litter. He was the first conscientious objector to ever receive the nation's highest military honor, and he earned it with nothing but his hands, his faith, and a heart that would not stop." Desmond lived the rest of his life quietly in Georgia. He married Dorothy, his childhood sweetheart. They raised a son. He planted a garden. He spent most of his days in pain. But he never stopped believing. He died in 2006, at the age of 87. His tombstone at Chattanooga National Cemetery reads simply, "He dared to be different." He went to war without a weapon. He walked into hell with only a prayer. And on a night when hope was gone and men were dying, Desmond Doss showed the world that courage doesn't kill. It saves. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.